All right, today we're diving into a really powerful concept from educator Ikhide Etaifo on a topic that's, well, it's incredibly sensitive. He calls it the first crack. You know, that quiet internal moment when you start to question a spiritual environment that just doesn't feel right anymore. It's a feeling a lot of people experience but really struggle to put a name to, so let's get into what it is and why it matters so much.
You know, it almost always starts with a question like this. It's not some loud, dramatic protest. It's just a whisper, deep down, that asks something like, why does this feel like fear instead of love? That's it. That's the moment of dissonance, when what you feel on the inside just doesn't match the story you're being told. And that right there, that's the first sign that something is really off.
And this is really the core idea. This realization, it's not some big, explosive event. It's a feeling, a small internal shift. The author calls it the first crack in a foundation you probably thought was solid rock. It's the very beginning of seeing things as they actually are, not just how you've been told they are.
So what is this thing that causes that first crack? Well, it has a name: spiritual abuse. Let's take a look at what that actually means and the patterns that start to show up.
Okay, so the technical definition is using spiritual authority to control, manipulate, or exploit someone. But here's the key phrase: under the guise of devotion. That's what makes it so tricky. This isn't about some obvious evil. It's about control that's disguised as holiness and manipulation that's dressed up as divine guidance.
To make this more concrete, the author lays out 5 telltale signs. Think of these as red flags. Patterns of behavior that are surprisingly consistent across all kinds of different groups. We're going to walk through each one.
First up, this idea of authority without accountability. Look, in any healthy system, leaders answer to someone. But in an abusive one, the leader is put on a pedestal, totally above question. Their words, their interpretations, even their personal opinions are all presented as God's will. So if you disagree with them, you're not just disagreeing with a person, you're being disobedient to God himself.
And this kind of authority is often enforced with a spiritual threat. You'll hear things like, if you leave this church, you are leaving God's covering. That's not just a friendly suggestion. It's a chilling warning that ties your very salvation to your absolute obedience to that one person or institution. It is an incredibly powerful tool for control.
Okay, the second sign is what the author calls guilt as an operating system. It's this constant nagging feeling of inadequacy. You're always told you're not praying enough or giving enough or believing enough. This isn't about healthy conviction that helps you grow. It's a system designed to keep you feeling like you're always falling short, which makes you completely dependent on the very leaders who are making you feel that way.
The third sign is isolation, and this one can be so subtle. Slowly but surely, the group becomes your entire world. Friends who ask tough questions are suddenly bad influences. Family members who show concern are labeled as worldly. Before you know it, your support network has shrunk until the only people you feel you can truly trust are inside the group.
Number 4 gets right to the heart of it: fear. There's this fundamental shift in how God is portrayed. Suddenly, the divine isn't a source of love and grace anymore. Instead, he's presented as this cosmic scorekeeper, this enforcer just waiting for you to mess up. So your service becomes about trying to appease this angry figure, not responding to love, and it is absolutely exhausting. And the final sign is the attack on your own mind. You're taught that your own thoughts are deceptive, that your gut feeling, your intuition, is unreliable, and that true faith means you have to shut down your own reason. The goal here is pretty clear: to get you to outsource your own conscience to the leadership.
When you really boil it all down, it comes to this stark contrast. On one side, you've got a relationship built on fear. It's transactional, it's exhausting, you're always trying to earn something. On the other side, you have a relationship built on love. It's foundational, it's life-giving. It's the difference between a prison and a sanctuary.
Now, while these signs are pretty universal, the author brings in a really specific focus from his work in Nigeria. He explains how these patterns can become even more powerful when they're woven into a specific cultural fabric.
So for example, you might have cultural proverbs that basically say, questioning an elder is the same as disrespecting them. That silences doubt before it can even be spoken. Economic desperation can make people so much more vulnerable to leaders who promise wealth in exchange for total devotion. And maybe most confusing of all, you often have this genuine, wonderful community existing right alongside the abuse, which makes it incredibly difficult to untangle what's good from what's harmful.
So, given how hidden and confusing this all can be, what's the turning point? I mean, how does healing even begin? Well, it starts with one absolutely crucial act.
You cannot heal what you cannot name. The very first step is just to name it.
So much of the pain comes from the confusion and the self-blame. By giving the experience a name, spiritual abuse, you start to reclaim your own story. The whole focus shifts from what's wrong with me to, wait a minute, what happened to me?
And naming it does three incredibly powerful things. First, it lifts that heavy burden of self-blame. Second, it just shatters the isolation when you realize you are not the only one. And third, it allows you to start separating your true, valid experience from the manipulative narrative you were fed.
Okay, so you've seen the crack, you've named the experience, what comes next? Because the crack isn't just an end, it's also a beginning. Let's look at where the hope really is.
The author has a really direct message for anyone out there who recognizes their own story in all of this. First, you are not crazy. Your feelings of confusion, of pain, of doubt, they are a completely valid response to an invalidating system. Second, you are not alone. And finally, and this is the most important part, the crack is not the end.
And this is the ultimate reframing. That crack isn't a sign that you're broken. It's the sign that your spirit is breaking free. It is the start of a journey back to the one voice that was silenced for so long. Your own.
So that first small moment of doubt, that question you were so afraid to even think, let alone ask, it wasn't a failure of faith. It was an act of courage. It's an opening. Because, as the author puts it so beautifully, the crack is where the light gets in. His final piece of advice? Use it.